Hello. 6 years ago, I'm having coffee with my mum, and she looks up from a travel magazine and she says, "Barnaby, you're always messing around in Europe. How many capital cities do you think you could visit in 24 hours by public transport?" Geez, that's a question, isn't it? Top of my head, I didn't know. But you can't say, "I don't know," to your mum, so I did an intelligent impression. I did a mental calculation based on no knowledge whatsoever and said 7. Mum says, "Jolly good. The Guinness World Record is 6. Off you go. Right, well, we all like a challenge, don't we? I'll try that again. We all like a challenge, don't we? Right, well, I particularly like a challenge. I'll give you a little bit of backstory to this, keep you in the loop as to why my mum thinks I should do a Guinness World Record. That's me when I was 16. My grandfather ran a rehabilitation centre in Nigeria for the blind. I had a dickens of a summer, I'll tell you. I went down there, I got food poisoning, I got malaria, I lost 2 stone, it's not much to lose, and Interpol got involved because I couldn't get home. So I think getting home on my own, 3 days in Lagos without my grandfather, entitles me to have a go at this. Then there's another side of me, which is less practical and a bit stupid. I'm up at 80 degrees north here. That's someone else taking a photograph of that. I see this iceberg that's come in, and the first thing I think is that is a challenge there. That looks particularly climbable. I'll get a photograph sitting on top of that, I think. Well, those of you who know anything about icebergs know that they are not particularly stable. I take one climb onto this, one leg up, whole thing rolls towards me, and that water is 1 degree. And I did that thing that we probably all do it, don't we? We look up and go, "What?" Did I get away with that? Which I absolutely, definitely didn't. There was a proper grown-up there, and he did that dad thing where he looks over and goes... But I think that's an important quality if you're attempting a world record. And here's the thing, really, what my mum was talking about. I did mess around in Europe. Doesn't he look young there? Yeah. I drove rock and roll equipment around for a lot of years, for some big bands, Paul McCartney, AC/DC, U2, but I knew you didn't want to hear about that. So I am qualified to a certain extent, messing around in Europe by road, which is particularly helpful if you're attempting a Guinness World Record by rail. So, do you think, let's have a show of hands, do you agree with my mum? Am I eligible to at least have a go at it? Yes! Alright, that's what happens. Now, here's how a Guinness World Record works. You get 15,000 people together, dress them up as... Have we still got the pirate record? Yes! Hey! Alright. Now what really happens is that you find a record on the Guinness site that you want to beat. Then you submit a proposal, and then you get a whole load of guidelines back, like stringent 20-page guidelines before you get started. And I got my 7 capitals, one of which was Zurich. Still. What's the capital of Switzerland? Nobody knows. Doesn't matter. Bern. It's Bern. Back to the drawing board. I get all my 7 capitals, and I thought this is a pretty high-profile opportunity to do something good, to raise some funds and raise some awareness for charity. So I'll get serious just for a couple of minutes. One of my big passions is eradicating human trafficking. Now, when do we think slavery ended? Never. Yeah, well, that's the official date, isn't it? And here's what I learned just before this record, that 25 million people, estimated, are enslaved in the world today. Yep. Jesus, 25 million. that is, I'll tell you what gets me there, is that is a figure that vastly dwarfs the entire number of slaves, African slaves, shipped to the Americas. That just seems so ridiculous. People being trafficked for organs, for sex, for labour, and a lot of them are kids. We don't even want to think about that. So I teamed up with ECPAT. They are End Child Prostitution and Trafficking. We put together a press release, put together a donation page, and then, as my mum would say, off you go. So here we are. This is the 14th of April, 2014. And I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll do the capital, and you shout the country. That's like a geography test of some description. So if I said London, you'd say... Yeah. You're looking lost. Is that too complicated? Right. And this is the beginning of the trip. This is capital number 1, and that's Gerard. He's chef de train on the Eurostar. If you've ever been on the Eurostar, he is the guy that says, bienvenue en Paris, saucisson. And he does it in English as well, but it sounds exactly the same. He's such a nice guy. And he stamped my logbook, started the stopwatch, and then literally off we went. And I have to say, the first leg of the journey was fairly smooth sailing. Upgraded to first class, given a bottle of wine, which in hindsight is not the best thing for starting a marathon trip. Yeah, and I get to Paris, and then the problems start. The French were on strike, which is unusual, isn't it? And I turn up, and on the board it says annulé. Now, some of you may already know, but my French is not great. I walk into the office, and we said good afternoon to each other. I went, he went, here we are, chérie. I said, je suis roast beef. Annulé, qu'est-ce que c'est? He went, how you say, cancelled. Cancelled? Jean-Pierre, I didn't get where I am today with cancelled trains. This is a Guinness World Record, is what I said in my head. But I said, ooh la la, blended in a little bit. Solution? He said, yeah, there is another train in half an hour. Half an hour. I have time to check my hotmail. And there's a message from my dad. My dad's battling with technology a little bit. He sent me an email saying that he's told his sister about this Guinness World Record, and that she's told her next door neighbour. He says, I think it's gone viral. Yeah, well actually I was getting media interest with this. There was a number of Texas missionaries retweeting the record. So I got on the next train to Brussels, which is capital of? Right, did we do Paris? We didn't, did we? No. We assume you know France, right. Brussels. So I get on the train to that, and it is late. Now here's the thing, it is public transport. So if you miss a connection, it's all off. You can't just hop in a taxi, because that's not public transport. Right? So I get on, and I look down, and the stopwatch has stopped. And Guinness has given me some pretty stringent guidelines, and so I thought, well, this might all be over, but let's just keep going. So I get to Brussels, and that's a good buddy of mine. He works for Brussels Airlines, and there's nothing in the rules about greasing palms of airline security and just slipping through a little bit quicker. So far, so good. Then it is time for a flight. Here we go, on the plane, and I had a good idea here. I asked if I could make an announcement, and the stewardess, or steward, politically correct, she said, yeah, sure, you can do it from the back. Now, I won't do this because it would totally screw up the video, but imagine I do this whole thing from behind you, you turn around and say, what's going on here, by which time I'd finished. So it was a fairly ineffectual performance, if you like. But this is on the plane to a place called Ljubljana. Capital of?
Slovenia.
Oh, Slovenia, very good, yeah. Famous for caves and Melania Trump, probably a few other bits and pieces. And when I came through, this guy is from Radio 1. Think I've gone viral. Radio 1 Slovenia, not Radio 1 UK. Absolutely great, this guy. He's got 2 questions. His first question is, he says, because you're such good friends with Bono, that is a lie, and your influence with U2, could you get them to play in Ljubljana instead of Croatia next year? I said, no, probably not, but I'll try. And his second question is, if you're in a rush, why are you on a Slovenian train? Well, that's a good point. But here's the thing. The planes close down at night, don't they? The early hours in the morning. But the train keeps on rolling. So the whole record really hinges on an overnight train. So here we are at silly o'clock in the morning with the train conductor stamping my book, because Guinness want quite a lot of proof for the record. I've got a 24-hour video camera, I've got a stopwatch, which has admittedly stopped, and I've got sandwiches still from my mum. So here we are, and the 24-hour video camera at this point, it's cheap, I've bought it off the internet, and it's got this little red light that blinks all the time. And the blinking thing stopped blinking, so I'm looking at it. I didn't sleep the whole night just watching this to make sure, because I've already screwed up the stopwatch thing. So I get to Vienna, capital of? Austria. Well-travelled group, yeah. And I came into Westbahnhof, and then I had to get to the other train station, Altbahnhof. Now, too far to walk, can't take a taxi. So I've got to take the metro. Now luckily I've got a friend of mine called Norbert. That's a great name, isn't it? Norbert, he's from a very small village. And he says, I will help you through the city. Yes, I will buy the metro tickets. Here he is, here's Norbert. Yeah, isn't he lovely? Well, he was so busy changing nappies, he was late. By which time I'd bought the metro tickets, and I follow him down into the metro blindly. And there we are, and he turns around and he says, oh, this is a treat. I don't use public transport. That's worrying, isn't it? When somebody is accompanying you on a Guinness World Record. So I look at the map and said, Norbert, where are we? And he says, there is construction at the main station. We go to a different station because most of the trains are going from there. Most of the trains? No, but this is serious. This is like 8 o'clock, and the next train that I've got to catch is 8:21, and I'm on a metro heading in completely the wrong direction. So it's a big problem. We asked someone else on the tube, metro, and he said, yeah, you're going definitely in the wrong direction. So there was this massive run to get onto the next platform. Here we are, 2 minutes before the next train. No time for pleasantries whatsoever. This guy signed my book, and we arrived in Bratislava, capital of?
Slovakia.
Ah, great. Well done, somebody's been on a river cruise down the Danube, yeah. Oh, you're from Bratislava, right. Beautiful, beautiful little place, yeah. No change of station, but I did have a change of platform at this. So actually it was time for a latte. Things were looking up at this point. And I finally arrived in Budapest, capital of? Hungary, yeah. And actually, you know when you run a race and there's a finish line? With this whole thing, there was no finish. It was just, oh, well, here I am. Nobody spoke English when I first came. So I ran through a hotel, found this guy, and he signed me off. This is actually incorrect, because if you remember, I'd lost 19 minutes. So it was 23 hours, 49 minutes. I'd done it. No need to clap. Well, I knew I'd done it, but Guinness then have to go through all of that 24-hour footage, which takes like 24 hours. And all the photos and all the rest of the evidence that they need. And finally, after 6 weeks, this is what you get. Anybody can do a Guinness World Record. You get a lovely little certificate telling you that you're officially amazing. That's nice, isn't it? So I am a Guinness World Record holder, but there is a moral to the story. Have I changed? The moral of the story is always listen to Mum. Mum knows best. Let's have a round of applause for all the mums. Now there was some media interest after this, and I went over to Sussex FM for an interview in Brighton, gone viral, and one of the things that I said was that was tight. 7 cities. If anybody does 8, I will eat my hat. Guess what happened?
Mum did 8.
These guys from Edinburgh, rotters. They didn't just do 8. Look, they got 9 in. They went to Berlin, they went to Prague, they did some extra cities. They didn't stop for a latte, and there were 2 of them. But what that does mean is that I am no longer a Guinness World Record holder. That's it. But I see that as an opportunity for me and for anybody else that would like to do a record. I just want to show you just at the end here what is available. Right, this is what's available. The first guy, he holds the record for highest number of candles extinguished by farts. Now I know there's at least 2 of my friends in the front here could beat that. The next guy, that's the fastest kick to the groin, is 22 miles an hour. I don't know whether it's the kicker or the kickee who has the record. And the final one here, this is, have you ever heard of Monsieur Mange Tout? It's Mr. Eat It All. Yeah, he ate an entire Cessna plane. Yeah. So if you think you could eat 2, by all means apply. So really, if you take nothing else away, when you go home, just have a little think. Could you do a Guinness World Record? What would it be? And who would you raise funds for? Thanks for listening.